Welcome to Supernormalized. I'm your host CJ Barnaby, and I like to challenge what's considered normal and invite people just like you to share your story, wisdom, and truth. Each week, I explore deep healing modalities, supernatural abilities, spiritual contact, and the often unexplained, whilst leaning into acceptance, personal growth, and real healing. If you're ready to step into a world where your story matters, you're in the right place. Enjoy finally being supernormalized. Today on Supernormalized, we welcome the guest Reginald Martin. He's a spiritual architect and metaphysician who has crafted Kemetaphysics, a unique fusion of ancient Kemetic science and modern psychology. Reginald's journey from religious fragmentation and depression into identity of resurrection offers a powerful blueprint for those ready to break free from the inherited spiritual limitations and live boldly on their own terms. He helps leaders, creators, and visionaries rewire subconscious programming without guilt or shame, stepping into sovereignty as the foundation of lasting legacy. If you've ever felt stuck between old faith systems and new freedoms, or wondered how you can integrate spiritual depth with practical transformation, this conversation will offer clarity, tools, and fresh perspectives. Stay tuned to uncover the hidden programming shaping your own life, decode sacred texts for personal power, and explore why sovereignty matters more than manifestation in today's world. Make sure you listen through to the end and take note of the actionable practices Reginald drops throughout the episode on emotional mastery, alignment, and energetic precision that you can begin applying in your own life right now. On with the show. Subscribe. Welcome to Supernormalized, Reginald Martin. Reginald, you're the foundation creator of Kemetaphysics and spiritual identity. I'm eager to hear your story about how that came about, what happened for you, and how has your life changed?
Yeah, so for me, Kemetaphysics is a passion work of mine, and it's really came out of life, out of dealing with life, and what Kemetaphysics is it's really taking ancient teachings that were really distorted by religion, and specifically what I've researched is through Christianity. So the foundation of everything that became Christianity came out of these ideas of ancient Kemet and what I call Kemetaphysics. But I actually backed into finding out about it by trying to find out about the law of attraction. Okay, thoughts become things. And when I backtracked about that, then I found the ancient wisdom of Kemetaphysics, which is really about helping you to become a sovereign being and a sovereign soul.
So how does it actually differ from other New Age teachings, and traditional faith systems?
So a lot of times what I found, and something that was frustrating for me, was a lot of the New Age teachings were built on woo-woo, and what I call just they were theoretical, they were philosophical, but when it came to actual practical application that you use in everyday life, they were just null and void. Okay. So, Kemetaphysics is based on really simplified ideas, in which a lot of the ancient concepts are very simple to use, but they are about helping us as souls, because that's the ancient point of view, so to speak, is that you are a soul projecting into the physical experience. So, how does you as a soul operate and navigate in the physical experience? So, in that way, it helps you to literally connect mind, body, and soul in a way that a lot of times what religion had done, like as a faith system for Christianity, it really disconnects you, because it teaches you not to trust your own inner being and your own inner guidance. And it makes you want to become validated by something outside yourself. So those two systems, so basically theoretical and practical from a New Age perspective, and then from a religious perspective, you have to be validated by something outside yourself, so you don't even trust who you are.
It sounds like the way it works, it's taking separate pieces of what would you call like universal wisdom and integrating it and pulling it together to create a more whole being. Is that correct?
Bingo, you said it beautifully. And that's what it does, because and we get a lot of pieces in different things. So even in religion, there are some hidden truths within it that we can stumble across. Within the ancient law of attraction, there are some pieces that we can stumble across, but nobody really, in my estimation, and I studied metaphysics and I was religious for a lot of years, they never integrated the two to where it could become practical, where you're not living in conflict every day about something. Okay.
Mm.
So Kemetaphysics brings together a number of different ancient teachings and symbolism, esoteric language, vibrational essence. It brings all of these together to create a cohesive system that really allows us to calibrate and integrate mind, body, and soul.
Okay. Can you describe what it means to reconstruct the inner architecture after that deconstruction part of personal religion?
Yeah, and it was just as I was saying here before, religion is built on, if I had to distinguish between the two, so we're talking about religion and spirituality in this sense. Religion is about an external locus of control, okay? But you are praying to something outside yourself. You believe your power is outside yourself, and you have to be validated to be okay from that perspective. That thing has to validate you and say you're okay to be a part of me in a sense. What Kemetaphysics does, it says, hey, wait a minute. The ancient teachings never ever taught that we were separate from the source. The ancient Kemetic teachings taught that we are source projecting as humans in this experience to experience life and really to become progenitors of our own joyful experience in the co-creation of life and experience. Okay.
Yeah. I'm hearing that like almost, well, actually, it's another angle on like an animistic take of reality as well, right? So we're a part of the co-creation in that, and then everything becomes alive because of that.
It's like the way I like to use an analogy of how this is like we can think of the source. You've probably seen like what they call the Russian nesting dolls, where there's a doll inside a doll inside a doll.
Yeah.
Well, that in a sense is how creation works. So if you think of the source as the main, the big doll that everything is within and descends through and out of. Okay. And we as a physical being is essentially an avatar or a doll that is inside the energetic umbrella of the soul of this energetic being that projects into reality for experience.
Mm. Yeah, that speaks to the whole like self-resurrection point of view of experience. Like as we're going along and getting to a certain point of self-understanding, that layer peels away, and then we come into being a new being again. That's self-resurrection over and over, right?
Yes, over and over. You said that beautifully. I mean, and it's about us really becoming aware of our beingness as the source in human form, and we're literally becoming more and more of ourselves as we grow and expand.
It seems like it's moving towards a certain point in reality and experience, and I've noticed over the years how more and more people actually are waking up to these sort of understandings as well. So it's all powerful that you're expressing this again in another format, and it all like resonates together, I'd say, at the same time. So what is the deeper esoteric meaning of resurrection that you understand, and how do you feel it's often misunderstood today?
Yeah, so the deep understanding of that is that resurrection from an ancient philosophical perspective is what they actually call remembrance. Okay. And the remembrance is that you are a soul having a human experience. Okay. When you incarnate into the physical plane, there is a mechanism that you forget who you are. And so you're incarnating into a game, so to speak, where you forget, but at some point you go through your human trials, tribulations, you're overcoming your fears to remember that you are the source in human form with the ability to create your reality as you through your will and through your being.
I think that's that understanding of us being a fragment of source creator and actually having that ability to create our reality is something we're divorced from as a part of societal control right now. I mean, just to give it a bit of understanding for people there. And within that, then we think we're powerless. But when
Yes.
in fact, we're actually all powerful all the time. And even in that powerlessness, and we think we can't do it, that's still creating.
Well, see, the ancients even spoke to that, CJ, about this, and this is what I do is a lot of times I take the ancient language and the ancient concepts and I update them into modern and our modern way of thinking because there's
Right.
nothing new under the sun. Okay.
Yeah.
So all these ancient ideas were spoken of in a spiritual sense, and many systems have the same ideas. Okay, so the idea of being the ancients used to say that that this reality is an illusion. Okay, but what most people mistake that as saying is that it's not real. Okay, that's not what the ancients were saying because our reality and our experience is very real. Okay, what they were saying is the illusion is that we are powerless.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so when we recognize our ability, because and this is what started me to trace these ideas back, was from the ideas of The Secret that said thoughts become things. Now I
Mm.
had experienced life in a way before I ever heard that I intuitively, when I heard that intuitively triggered something in me and said that is very true. And it's because of things that I had experienced before in life, just through living life. Okay.
Yeah.
And when I started to go back and even in The Secret, they had alluded to the Greeks being the ones who had the secret. Okay. They didn't say it, but they just had images showing the Greeks. Well, I knew that the ancient Egyptians taught the Greeks.
Yeah.
So that made me go back and start to learning about ancient Egypt and ancient African spiritual teachings. So it was something that, because of who I am and my culture, it was something that I was very interested in. When most people would stop at the Greeks or the Romans, and they'd never go back to ancient Africa. But when I went back to ancient Africa and Egypt and started to study these ideas, it was like a whole new world opened up, and it started to confirm so many things about our experience that is just fascinating to me, whether it be life after death, whether it be living life. All these things are addressed on some level.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've all been through all this before. So, but just
Thousands
at
of
different levels.
times.
Thousands of times. That's right. It's just the experience that we seem to like to come back to. So,
Absolutely. And then when we are through with this experience, we incarnate into other experiences.
yes.
So
Yeah.
it's a never ending cycle of really of creation and creativity as a soul. That's what we really get our joy from, because the soul lives in a constant vibrational essence of joy. And with Kemetaphysics, it really helps you to calibrate when you are being soul aligned or soul misaligned. And in that sense, you essentially just you calibrate through your emotional states. When you're feeling good, and it's really this simple. When you're feeling good, you're soul aligned and you're on your path. Okay. When you're feeling bad, you're misaligned. You're off your path. So the deal is as you're going through life to use those two poles as your guidance system. Okay. And when you really tap into that, and the key is to trust it. When you trust it, life becomes magical. It becomes amazing. And it's like things start to happen. Just it's like lucky stuff falls out the sky and something shows up just right at the nick of time. And all, but it's through that trust that everything aligns for you.
Speaks to the magical universe that we all live in, really.
Absolutely.
When you're in alignment, it dialogues with you. That's what happens.
We'll say that one more time.
So when you're in alignment, the universe dialogues with you directly.
Absolutely. Dialogues with you, guides you. And again, our biggest issue a lot of times is just trusting that we live in a safe universe. Because
Yes.
a lot of times what we've been taught, and especially, and I always go back to religion because religion frames a lot of things for us, and it ends up framing a lot of things in a negative and fearful way. So when you get these negative frames, you end up living in a vibrational state that really draws that negative stuff to you, because really and truly what I've learned through studying this and what I've experienced, it's not just book knowledge. What I've experienced is that life really is a reflection of your inner states of being. Okay. Life is meant to show you who you are being. So if there is some aspects of life that you don't like, then you have to change that inner aspect of you to align with what you do like. And what ends up happening is that when we have these religious frames, we get taught these fearful ideas about living life, about being, ideas that we can go to hell, or demons are after us, and all these fearful ideas we're taught that if you believe that, you are going to meet your beliefs, hands down.
If you've actually wanted to break free from your inherited programming, this part will be right on point for you. Many people carry invisible scripts from religious conditioning. How would you help somebody uncover that programming behind the programming?
So one of the things you have to do, and I like to say there's a three-stage arc that I take people through. And one is that you are going to first stabilize, then you decode, and then you resurrect. What helps you stabilize is to first pierce through those ancient teachings, because in a religious sense, and again, I always go back to Christianity because that was what I was raised with. But anytime that you have a religious frame that teaches you negatively, the same principles apply. But through Christianity, through ancient Kemet, I can actually take you back before Christianity got a hold of these ideas and then distorted them. Once you learn the ancient ideas before they were distorted, it helps you recalibrate your thinking, because a lot of times people can deconstruct and they can literally stay in that limbo for years. I know I did. Okay. But the ancient Kemetic ideas actually show you what these ideas were before the dogma. Okay. Then you can decode the ancient teachings, and then those ancient teachings helps you to recalibrate to where you do resurrect in a more empowered state of being. You think in a different frame. It literally takes you from, say, from Christianity, where you're taught, I'm a born sinner, I'm a wretch, I'm unworthy. That's a whole frame. Okay.
Yeah.
With ancient Kemetic teachings, you're not a born sinner. It changes the frame, and it's a whole different paradigm to I am born divine. Okay. I am the creator in human form. Even the Bible says that you are made in the image of God. But if you equate yourself with that in Christianity, that's taught that's blasphemous. Whereas in the ancient Kemetic and in the ancient African teachings, it was really about you are that thing, you are that stuff in human form. Okay. So from that perspective, and one of the ways that I bring that home is through an analogy of, if you think of the source of creation as an ocean, okay, and that you are a part of that ocean, then you are a drop in that ocean, okay? You're not different from it, you're just a different magnitude. Not only are you a drop in that ocean, the ocean is in the drop. So you are one and the same. It is you, and you are it. So this even goes back to the a lot of times the ancient, or I'm sorry, the New Age teachings talk about oneness, but how do they explain that? How do they make that practical? And what I just explained is the ocean analogy brings you back to understanding the oneness of who you are and how you are connected to all of creation. And all of us are in that ocean connected on some level through our vibrational essence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's definitely something that people need to sit with, I think, to really grasp. Yeah, yeah. So how do concepts like guilt and obedience act as a mental malware, and what practical steps can people who are listening take to begin releasing those?
Yeah, that's a great question, CJ, because that's really what people don't realize is that those emotions that are elicited through religion are not virtues. Okay, so a lot of times we think that guilt is something that we're supposed to carry around, and guilt just means that you believe that you've done something wrong. Christianity sets that frame, and a lot of systems set that frame that you are born wicked. You're born, away from the source. So you automatically have a guilt that you can't even resolve hoisted up on you from the day you were born, supposedly. Okay. Shame means that I am wrong. There is something wrong with me. Okay. So the idea is again, is I go back to how we really get a person past that is to first, I go back and show where Christianity distorted these concepts. Okay. The idea of being a born sinner, the idea of being fallen angels, all of this kind of stuff is actually a distortion of these ancient teachings. Because
Right.
the in actuality, from a philosophical perspective, what the ancients were saying that fell into matter, okay, was actually the light and will of the creator. Okay. That didn't mean that something was wrong with the creator. The creator actually came into physical reality to experience. That changes the framework. Once you understand that you're not a born sinner, you're not born, you're not something separate from the creator, you are born divine. That frame changes everything. And you can start to operate from a whole different paradigm that is more empowering.
It sounds like a conscious leap. Almost of faith, because really the understanding that you're at when you're stuck in those frames, which are lower frequency, can really hold people down. So then just actually to first of all understand that you are more than that is that conscious leap to be able to get out of that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It is a totally different way of thinking about you and your being. Okay. But if you go back to most spiritual systems, and this is what something that I say about those teachings, is when it came to the Christian doctrines, what was new was not true, and what was true was not new. That what that means is that these ideas that really connect all spiritual systems, okay, are what's the truth of these ideas that we are the source in human form. So Christianity flipped that and put something and took it outside of us, because ultimately the journey is about recognizing your own divinity. That's what remembering is about. That's what resurrection is about, is when you recognize your own divinity and the power to co-create your reality as you choose through your will, through the will and the light of the creator that is within you.
That's our birthright.
Absolutely, positively.
What are some common ways struggle has been spiritualized as virtue, and how can people reclaim peace without self-rejection disguised as faith?
A beautiful, beautiful question. So one of the ways is that, and again, I have to contrast Christianity because I think that impacts a lot of people. But we are taught that through the crucifixion of Jesus, sacrifice is something that we're all supposed to like do on some level. But sacrifice is really a negative emotion. But what I do is I go back and I show you that actually the idea of crucifixion was really about each and every one of us Crucifixion in the ancient context was actually when the soul crossed over into physical reality. It was the four elements of air, earth, fire, and water, and I'm talking metaphorically here, that allows you to cross over. The crucifixion was actually you forgetting who you were as a source, as the source in human form. Okay,
Wow, you flip it completely over
that
into a greater understanding of who you really are by showing
yes.
that it's been turned against us.
Yes, and those stories were not about one miracleized individual. The stories were a framework and archetypes for us to learn from and experience life through. And say, for instance, like one of the stories, and let's just talk about the miracles, okay? And as a Christian, I don't know if you were raised Christian or not, CJ, but I was raised to learn to look at the miracles as something I was supposed to marvel at the power of Jesus, okay? But if you go back to the ancient teachings, and there is an esoteric level to the Bible that you can extract a whole different layer and level of knowledge from. So that miracle, say the miracle of walking on water, okay? That is a framework because water becomes a symbol of emotions. It becomes a metaphor for our emotions. Walking on water is the light and the will within us and the ability to be able to rise above our emotions in turbulent times. We all go through turbulent times. It's something that I don't care if you live long enough, you're going to go through something difficult in your life that you have to overcome. Okay? That's what that story is saying, is that just what I just said, that all of us at some point are going to go through difficulties that we have to learn to overcome emotionally. We have to rise above the emotions and not let fear sink us, not let fear the fear get into the boat, so to speak, and sink it.
Yeah.
That's what that miracle meant. It was a framework. And if you go back to each of the seven miracles, you literally see the framework, and it's just talking about different aspects of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
shifts you to a whole nother level of empowerment from my perspective. That's what it did for me, and that's what has done for thousands of people who have learned these ideas. It's
Nice.
empowering.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely empowering. I mean, just our discussion of it has made me think about things in a different way already, and I really like that because it's good to get new information. Now, for those that have left formal religion but feel stuck in old patterns, what does true spiritual freedom actually look like?
It is the freedom to be who you are, and to live life not from being judged, but to live life from you creating yourself and living from your own standard. I like to say, you live life on your terms. Because if you think about it, from a lot of times, not just religion, but in society, there are things that are normalized, that we're supposed to live a certain way. I grew up in a culture where you were supposed to get a good job, and you were supposed to work on that good job basically till you died. So I stepped out of the norm, and I literally created a whole new lane, a whole new business when I created the ideas that I speak of as Kemetaphysics. I One day, CJ, I decided to call in well. I called my old boss and I said, well, I'm not coming in anymore. I'm done with this. Okay. And I bet on myself, but I chose a way to live life on my terms. But the reason I was able to do that, CJ, is because I had learned a lot of these ideas, and I recognized myself as a creator, and that I wasn't bound by what society had told me I should live by. Okay. So operating from that place, it brings you a level of confidence to step out and try something new and different. Okay. That's what I did. Now, that doesn't mean that when you step out, that you're not going to go through the emotional ups and downs. Okay. Because from I'm going to get a paycheck and I know when I'm going to get it every month, to, well, if I'm not creating something or somebody doesn't do this or whatever, I might not be paid. I might not get to eat. That's a whole totally different way of thinking. And so you have to learn how to calibrate and walk on water in that new frame that you're living in. But the bottom line is you gain the confidence from a new paradigm that gives you a foundation that you can start to build on and build your confidence and your knowledge and ability that you are a creator in this experience. That's a whole new empowering way to think and be.
Here's some practical tools and healing processes that you can employ in your own life. Can you walk us through the Spotlight Observer method and how it helps clients to step out of emotional reactivity?
Oh, yeah, that's such a powerful method. And the foundation of it is that you learn to recognize and step out and look at what you believe and why you believe. So it's putting a spotlight on your beliefs, because what beliefs do is, when you start to focus through a belief in reality, it acts like a spotlight. Okay. And you can only see those things that you believe in. Okay. But the spotlight observer method helps you to step back and become what psychologists call become in a metacognitive state, to where you can analyze what you think. Okay, why do I believe this? Why do I think this? One of the ways to do that is, again, I talked about you calibrating yourself emotionally, because at some point during your day, you're going to feel a certain way about certain things. What happens is when you start to feeling low or depressed, that should be a signal for you that something is off because you're misaligned. Okay. Well, you can say, wait a minute, what was I thinking before that brought on that feeling? Because emotions always follow your beliefs. Okay. So if you start to feeling something triggered that feeling. It might have been a smell. You might have been watching something on TV. Somebody might have said something, but something triggered you. And the deal is that with the spotlight observer method, is that you start to go back and analyze what it was that made you start to thinking a certain way. When you're able to do that, and at first it's kind of hard to do, but it's a simple process. But through practice, you can learn to trace your thoughts and what you believe that triggered the emotion. When you do that, you become a whole new empowered being, because you're not at the mercy of your emotions.
Yeah, it sounds like the method involves a lot of self-observation to the point of understanding your own drives.
Yes, bingo. You end up having the ability to really turn into yourself, which is really the true power, is that you end up tapping into your own guidance and wisdom.
How does the art and reciprocity framework transform life's challenges into feedback loops for conscious change?
Powerful question. And the reason how that does that is, from the ancient perspective, ma'at is the idea that our inner beliefs, our inner vibrational essence, is being reflected or is being projected as life. Okay, life then becomes the mirror to tell us what we are being, how we are believing. Okay, so in this sense, ma'at, one of the epitaphs of Ma'at is that it is truth. Okay. The idea is that our inner subjective being, our inner subjective beliefs are our truth that are projected as reality. So in that way, the process of looking at life from a symbolic perspective, in other words, the people, the events are symbols in some way, shape, or form of our inner vibrational essence. And how they are functioning in our lives, and our life tells us what we are being and what we are thinking, what we are believing. So in that sense, life becomes feedback for what you're projecting. When you want to change the projection, You change the inner beliefs and the inner feelings that are being projected, and then life changes.
Mm. As a part of your work, you actually suggest some daily practices like journaling, which actually help people to rewire their fear, shame, and guilt at their root. How do people start a practice like that? And how do they identify what they need to write down?
Yeah, and it's just you just basically make a conscious effort that you're going to write down what you are going through, say during a day, okay? And how you decide what to write is simply what you're experiencing, okay? A lot of times, what can happen is you start to it can tap you into what's called automatic writing. Okay. And automatic writing is basically when you just let things flow through you. You're not even thinking about what you're writing. You just put it down. Okay. You're literally tapping into a higher level of yourself. And sometimes you can, well, I won't say sometimes, there's a lot of times that you can write things down. You can come back, a day or a week later and read that stuff and be like, where did that come from?
I've done that many times.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people don't realize that it's such a natural aspect. We're literally channeling knowledge through ourselves from that higher being within us, or that is us. We're literally channeling knowledge. And when you journal, you can literally coach yourself.
Okay. So how do you guide clients to actually trust that inner wisdom and develop that sovereignty in decision making? It seems like what you need to do as a part of this is to really trust your pure intuition, because that is a direct link to source.
You just answered the question right there. You need to trust. Okay. Yeah. But see, it's such a simple. Once you really get on this page like this, it really is a simple idea. The hardest thing is to trust, okay? Because if you grew up in religion like I did, you're taught not to trust. There is a scripture that was taught: lean not on your own understanding. That is basically saying don't trust yourself. Trust what's outside. Trust a preacher, trust a deacon, trust all these other people. Lean not on your understanding, because you can't trust what's in your mind. Okay.
Do you think that people might have been saying that to people because they're essentially trying to protect them from nefarious spirits that might have been influencing them? Because I mean, if people are saying that to people, they might be doing it because of that reason. It's just because sometimes, there could be false intuitions that are coming through because something's hanging around trying to actually get control of you.
That is how that is taught. That basically there might be, you can't trust your own intuition because, is this from God or the devil? Okay.
Yeah.
But in reality, there is no separation. It's all you. You have the ability, no matter and the possibility of demons and all of that, of course, is possible because we live in a dualistic universe. So there's one side and the other, but you are all powerful in your universe. There is nothing that can penetrate I'll just call it a dome. There's nothing that can penetrate your dome of power that you don't allow. So when you start to question your own guidance system, that it's like the whole system can start to crumble, because you are basically saying, okay, I don't trust what came through me. Let me go ask Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so what they think. Now, CJ, how many times have you went and asked Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, and it always seems that their advice kind of fits into what they need you to do for them?
Sounds like regular life to me.
you know, so trust yourself above all others. Now, through trial and error, you're going to have things that are going to happen. Okay. But if you filter that trust through fear, you are going to meet your fears, because life is going to reflect back to you what you believe always. So if you have been living through that frame that there is something nefarious, or that these entities, and I'm not saying that they don't exist, I'm saying that if you live through that frame and that belief, then you give that vibrational essence that those beings live within the ability to connect with you.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at yourself and you look at the universe from a place of the universe is a friendly place. The universe wants you to succeed. The universe wants you to be happy. The universe elicits joy. If you approach life from that perspective, then you can't even exist on the vibrational level of anything nefarious.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can't even recognize you. They can't see you.
Yeah, different frequency.
Different frequency. It's the same thing. And I like to use just a different way. And this is where, again, I just take it to the practical. Because, CJ, have you ever lost your keys? And then you go around the room and you're looking for your keys, you can't find them. You start to get frustrated. Okay.
Yeah.
Then at some point you just relax and you relax and then you let it go. And then you walk by a place that you knew you had walked by before, and all of a sudden there your keys are. CJ, you just experienced being able to flow through different dimensions. Because you were so focused in one way before, you could not see the keys. They were not there. But you literally shifted into another dimension and all of a sudden your keys appeared. People will think like, man, that's just crazy. But that's how reality works.
Yeah, agreed.
You literally vibrationally you move to a new vibrational level and your keys existed in that space. That's how they appeared.
Yeah, and the relaxation took that.
Yes. Relaxation and just saying, okay, I forget it, I'll let it go. And as soon as you let it go, something happens, and then boom, your keys are there. Or boom, what you needed comes through. Boom, something happens, just seems like miraculous. But it's because you changed your vibration. You changed your focus.
Absolute truth. What does legacy leadership mean in the context of Kemetaphysics, especially for spiritually evolved leaders and creators?
Well, in that sense, it is about because what I've done is what I do is I teach teachers. Okay.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, and it starts back to where we started in the beginning, that a lot of times the new age stuff can be very woo-woo. It can be abstract. It can be philosophical, theoretical, but it's not practical. So as a leader, when you learn these ideas, it gives you ability to help your clients. It gives you the ability to literally help them shift in real time, and they can recognize for themselves when they are shifting because you have tools and processes that you can work with and work through Kemetaphysics. Okay, simple tools. Nothing is like difficult and confusing because the ancients knew that when life started to get you off kilter and to throw all these waves and stuff at you, you needed something simple to get you back on track. Well, as a leader, when you are teaching these ideas, then you're going to leave a legacy of people that you've helped. You're going to leave a legacy of beauty and empowerment that you have actually helped to seed the universal consciousness with. The more we plant these seeds, the more they have the ability to be ingested or tapped into by others. Yes. Consciousness, we literally are seeds of the infinite. And when we live in a certain way, we are signaling and uploading our being, our vibrational essence up into this, what I would call the infinite cloud, the infinite consciousness. And so when anybody reaches that level, they can literally download these ideas. And that's why a lot of times in automatic writing, you're literally downloading those ideas that somebody has uploaded to the infinite consciousness. There's nothing new under the sun. So you leave a legacy. So if you're a leader, you're going to leave a legacy with that behind you.
Yeah. How do you support high achieving clients who experience isolation or purpose fatigue despite their external success? Because there is people that get there and it doesn't really have the the sweet taste of victory.
Yeah, and I think that CJ, that just comes from the way that you really perceive or look at things, because sometimes you are going as a leader, and this is something that I have experienced, and it might be something that you've experienced, CJ, because what you're doing is you're literally creating a platform for people that think differently. When you think differently, you're different, and there's not a lot of people that are going to agree with you or be able to reside in your level of vibration and your level of wisdom and knowledge. So once you understand that, then I think you come to a point to where you lead, and there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. When you're alone, you learn to love your own company. You find ways to live and ways to adapt. I just recently went on a cruise. I went alone, but I enjoyed the heck out of myself. you know
Nice. Yeah.
so individuals like ourselves, CJ, we learn to adapt, and we learn to recognize that we can't save everybody, and we can't live in the same zip code, so to speak, as everybody, because we can't tolerate a lot of BS.
Yeah, well, that's what happens as you tune up. It's like, well, I'm not going to take that low frequency stuff anymore because it actually doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth, and and I don't need that in my life. I mean, I like, I'll give an example of that for myself. Is like, as I've tuned up, now I can barely watch any streaming services at all because nearly all of the content is garbage. It's like, I don't
Oh
want
my
to
God.
I don't want to watch stuff where people are being killed all the time, or the state's being glorified for ridiculous things. It's like, what is it? It doesn't even matter. It's like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous stories, or about people that have that are living in a lower vibration and totally dissatisfied with work, and it's supposed to be ironic and comical. It's like, no, it's not. It's boring.
Yeah, it is. And you're just not tuned to that anymore. And literally, you don't even want to tune to that because it can end up planting a seed in you that's
Exactly.
negative. And you don't want
Yeah.
that, you know?
Well, recently there was a massively popular show called White Lotus, and I couldn't even get through one episode. It was so awful. But everyone was talking about how good it was. I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah, yeah.
How did you like that?
Yeah, and it's like so many people gravitate towards negativity. And even if you think about it, in social media, it's geared to capture people's negative attention.
Yes, I think that's it. I think that's the key thing.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
Because there are so many, there are certain shows that I like to watch, and stuff like that. And very few of them that I do because, again, I just don't want to tap into the negative stuff. But what ends up happening is invariably those shows, they end up starting to title their stuff to capture negative attention. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to watch that anymore. So I
Yeah.
end up moving away from those shows because there's just certain things they literally start to project the doomsday stuff. The world is gonna. They start to do all this negative stuff because that's what people gravitate towards. Positive news does not always bring big results.
Well, look at things like, say, that sort of doom sort of lifestyle, that doom understanding. It's a lower frequency thing. And I think that what happens is when people get to that point in their lives where everything is sort of routine and numb, they need to watch a show like that just to even feel alive.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. It's like people who get into gossip. Okay,
Yeah.
these people are so numb and so devoid of life that they need the gossip to feel something.
Yes.
But people like us, CJ, every day overcoming our fears and overcoming the things that hold us back in life, that is our TV.
Exactly.
That is our what do you call it, our reality show.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that becomes that becomes the thing that feeds us, that excitement, that feeds us on a daily basis. We don't need something outside of us looking into somebody else's life to feel excited about something because we are evolving. every day.
Exactly. Exactly. A lot of those stories, the lives of those people, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with those people. So,
Yeah. And then I don't enjoy watching people, feel bad or get hurt or what. I don't enjoy
yeah.
that.
No, that's stupid.
You know?
It speaks to that understanding of soul sovereignty and sovereignty within the self. And how is that more powerful than manifestation in creating a sustainable and sovereign life? What do you think?
Well, see, now I wouldn't say that it's necessarily more powerful, but a sovereign soul is the idea that you are in control of you, you know? But through that, you are able to manifest the life that you want. But in the context of, say, law of attraction stuff, they taught this idea that thoughts become things, and that's all you needed to do to manifest, you know?
Yes.
So in that context, that's what made me start to really research these ideas, because I'm like, man, that's just so simplified. And what I've experienced, just what I think don't become things, you know? Matter of fact, I thought, and the question that really came to my mind, CJ, was how do I get my prayers answered? And I think in that context, and I'm speaking of prayer not in the religious sense, but in the sense of manifesting. Okay. I wasn't getting my prayers answered. So how do I do that? Well, I started to research the science of really manifestation. And what I recognized was, and when I went back to ancient Kemet, it became really clear that thoughts become things was very, very superficial, because it really comes down to you understanding that you have an internal system, that the thought is like a seed. If you think of the thought as a seed, and then your internal being, your internal way of being, your internal states as the soil. Okay. If you have a positive thought, but you have a pessimistic way of being, you can plant that positive thought into that pessimistic soil and it cannot be nourished.
Yes.
So it won't manifest. So it isn't just a thought. It is that you have to be able to plant a seed in the soil that will nourish that thought before it manifests. That's how I recognized that my prayers weren't being answered, because I would think a certain positive thought, but fear was in me, doubt was in me. That won't nourish that positive thought. So in that way, that's how being a sovereign being is recognizing that you have the power to create, but you have to understand the science of what it takes to create. You can have that thought, but you have to plant it into the right soil that will nourish it, so that it can manifest and that you can create.
How do you make that soil?
You focus on the things that you desire. This is the simple way that I teach this idea, is that there is always going to be, again, the duality. So there's going to be the positive thing and the negative thing. Those two possibilities are always there. But the thing you want to do is stay focused on this positive thing moving forward. If you stay focused on that, then what happens is faith will kick in. And when I say faith, I don't mean belief in something that somebody told you. Faith as a manifesting tool. Okay? This is a process. So you might be here and what you want is here, but you have to vibrationally hold that essence, okay, and move closer and closer to that thing that you want until you merge with it and manifest it. Okay. So in that sense, when you stay focused on what you desire, then the law says it has to manifest. But what happens is that we'll watch something and go say, this is the positive way of being, this is the negative way of being. What will happen is that we end up saying, like, man, I sure want this. Why haven't I got it yet? What just happened when I asked that question? I turned away from the positive thing. Okay.
Doubt.
So you're going like, man, okay, I want this. Where is it at? Where is it? Okay.
We all do that though, until we actually realize that also is a creative act as well, right?
Bingo. It ends up, it takes you off base, and it takes you off of what you want. So the simple thing is when you're trying to manifest, it isn't just thinking positive, it's being positive. And when you stay focused, and you have to be vigilant. and stay focused on what you desire, that's being. It becomes an aspect of being and not just your thought.
It's living in the truth.
It's living in the truth. It's living in now, because what you are focused on, you're bringing that vibrational aspect into your now.
Yes. Living now, not the idea of what now is.
Bingo, bingo. You are literally, you're already connected, because when you think about it, you've connected to it. But in order to manifest it, you have to literally merge vibrationally with it, because it's already there. What you've thought about, it's already created. It already exists. You can't even think about it if it doesn't.
That's it.
But when you stay focused, you are staying focused in the now. You're staying vibrationally connected to what you desire. But as soon as you go, where is it? You just disconnected.
Well, you could say it's disconnected, but you could also say you just created a disconnect.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You're already creating your own block, and we got to think in terms of linear and stuff like that. But this is not a linear manifestation thing. But that's the easiest way we can understand it. But if you think positive, but then you focus on what's not, you can't get what you desire.
You've looked away from the truth.
Yes, your truth.
Yes.
You literally turn vibrationally away from it.
That's it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So for listeners that are beginning their own spiritual liberation journey, what is one invitation or insight from Kemetaphysics they can hold on to right now?
Oh, man, that is really, CJ, that is really about tapping into your own inner being and trusting yourself. Okay?
Yes.
And the way that you do that is how I said in the beginning, is that you have to tap into your own emotional states. You recognize the simplicity of when you're feeling good, then you are soul aligned. And this is operating from a metaphysical perspective. Okay. This is operating from above the physical body. Okay. When you're operating emotionally and you feel good, you're soul aligned, you're connected. Okay. You're in vibrational resonance with your being, and that means that you are automatically on the right path. When you're feeling bad, CJ, that means that you are off path. And if you can just keep it that simple. So if anyone that's listening to this, it is that simple. Anything else in between is just that. It's in between. But when you are hyper focused on what you desire, and you understand that your emotions calibrate you to your soul level experience, then you have a tool that will help you stay on your path. And it is that simple. Feel good, you're aligned. Feel bad, you're not. It's that simple. Don't complicate it.
Nice. Nice. How can people stay connected with your work, Reginald, and your community for ongoing support in their transformation?
Yeah, they can go to my Substack account at reginaldmartin.substack.com. And I am literally, and that is my newsletter that I am literally writing at least 3 times a week, that I am teaching these ideas, and I'm breaking down esoterically, I'm breaking down energetically, just like I've done here with you, CJ, and I'm teaching these ideas and really planting seeds to empower people. But reginaldmartin.substack.com is how they can stay connected to me.
Excellent, Reginald. What I'll do is I'll put that down in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your understanding and your wisdom around Kemetaphysics. It's so in alignment with what people need right now, and I think that people will definitely come and visit you and learn more about your work.
Most definitely. CJ, thank you so much for having me here, man. This has been great.
Excellent. All right, I'll just say goodbye to listeners. There seems to be a theme that happens throughout a lot of these episodes that I'm finding now, which is it's becoming extremely common. We're all talking about going towards a path of self-sovereignty and reconnection and alignment with truth. And again, in this episode with Reginald, we actually have this alignment with truth as a means to self-understanding about what your path is. And again, a great episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed today's episode, remember to like and subscribe. And if you're on a podcast app and you want to encourage me, please write me something nice and give me 5 stars. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. Until next episode, it's bye for now.
Hey,
Yeah, sure.
remember to like and subscribe. The full video is below.